So should we just wing it, or you want me to just give you a rough idea what the questions are?
Let's just wing it, bro.
All right.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me.
Hi, my name's Will, and welcome to Getting to Know You. I've been trying to interview this guy for what must be several years now. I'll accost him at a show and suggest an interview, and it's all like, yeah, sounds great. Then the communication trail goes cold, and after maybe about the third time of prying, we managed to make it happen. So, Mark Petersen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Will. Third time's a charm.
With these interviews, I try to delve into the pasts and the personas of people who do things in the music scene. They're usually a little bit more in depth than the band ones I do, because, you know, the band ones are just like, who's in the band? What are you doing at the moment? But a person like you's been in the sort of New Zealand music scene for a very long time, in one form or another. So I thought we might sort of go back in time, if you will, back to your sort of childhood, find out where you grew up, where you sprang from.
Well, I grew up in West Auckland, Avondale to be precise. Went to local schools around there. Grew up in a lovely little cul-de-sac down the bottom by the Whale Creek, which is a Tiwai out of place. And it was a lovely childhood. You know, kids playing in the street. This is back in, the 70s. I was born in 64. And we just had it was just great, with all races, all colours, all creeds, getting along, going to school, playing softball in the streets and kicking balls around and riding bikes. And when the music side of things came along, I remember my dad bought a secondhand radiogram, and we were given a box of records by a young teenage girl up the road who was moving. So he said, "Oh, do you want this box of records?" to my father. And he said, "Yeah, I'll take them." And I, of course, I saw a machine, like, oh, it's a record player. Wow, it makes sound. And I just went through all of these singles. It was a stack of 45s, must have been 30 or 40 of them. And that was really my introduction into, I guess it was mainly 60s music. And that really is what started me on my path. So thank you, Shanley Porton, that was her name, and I remember it, for handing me those records. There's still some of the tunes that I like today.
So that was your kind of first introduction to music.
Mm-hmm.
As far as sort of like choosing an instrument, I presume that guitar was your first choice because that's what you play now.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I do have a musical heritage, pardon me, in my family. My grandfather was a vaudeville performer in Australasia. Rudy Petersen was his name. He also was in the entertainment industry, things like circuses and running picture theaters and plays and things like that. My dad is a great crooner, but he never, him and my granddad performed on live on radio back in the day when Dad was a boy. And but he never played an instrument, as far as the spoons, I guess you could guess if you could call that an instrument. My mum, on the other hand, was able to whack out 3 chords on a ukulele, and she bought me a ukulele when I was maybe 8 or 9. And I just sat alone in my room and just, worked out chords, learned how to tune it. And My Dog Has Fleece, all that thing. And then when I was about 11, they bought me my first acoustic guitar, which was a cheap K-Poc, terrible action like that, cut me hands to shreds, but, that's the way to learn. Mm. And I joined up with a bunch of like-minded people at the primary school who also played guitar, and instead of going out and playing sports, I was a weedy little honky guy, and we'd just go into the bogs and just jam out some of the latest tunes on the wireless back then, and I found it a really good way to make friends. And I just took it from there.
So as far as sort of getting an electric guitar and sort of going off on that route, when was that? Was that a little bit later on, I'd imagine?
Yeah, I believe it was my dad went to a party. He was a member of the local club, you know, the RSA and that. And they'd always be having parties. He came home one day half cut, and he had this electric guitar in his hand, and I lost my shit, you know. I go, what shit are you say? I just bought it off John Hurt for $40, and it was a beautiful old Japanese. It was a Tesco, which are quite sought after. I've only seen a few around. And that was my introduction. I had no amplifier, so I managed to, well, much to my dad's chagrin, get hold of his reel-to-reel tape recorder and turn it into an amplifier. Tiny little 10-inch speaker that just broke up and distorted straight away, and I just loved it. You know, it was about 3 watts, and I was just wrecking it, you know, by plugging this guitar into it, and it, all distortion, you know, and I was just like, I was hooked. Man, I was hooked.
I used to plug keyboards and things into my dad's home stereo into the microphone.
Yeah.
He came home from work one day and he saw me doing it, and I was like, I was testing the speakers. It was not good. It was like, and he was like, "What the bloody hell are you doing?"
Clipping your speakers, Dad.
Yeah. So it's probably much the same as your situation.
Yeah.
One of the bands that I discovered you were in was a band with Jan Hellriegel,
Yeah.
and I think it was her partner as well, or was it her brother?
That was her brother, Rob. Yeah.
And that was in Dunedin. So, like, Jan was also from, I think she was from Auckland as well.
Yeah.
You were from West Auckland. So everybody was down in Dunedin, presumably for university. Is that correct?
Correct. Apart from me.
What was your story? Why did you end up down that neck of the woods?
My compadres back then, that we're all Avondale born and bred, and my good friend Tony Berry was working for Jan Hellriegel's father at a panel beating shop. And that's how I got to meet Rob and Jan. I was playing in a covers band at the time, and you know, just around parties and things like that, just cutting my teeth basically. And we got to know each other through them. And then they started a band in Dunedin called Working with Walt, and put out an EP and stuff, and did a video, and came back to Auckland, and they were looking for a drummer and guitarist. And my friend and I, Kevin Fielden, who was played drums, who I had been playing with, just kicking around jams, you know, kicking out the jams. And we decided, oh, shit, let's just do a roadie down to Dunedin and see what it's like, you know. And so we went down there, both on the dial at the time, which was livable then. And we ended up squatting in a place up in North Road that was due to be demolished to make room for the Ross home, which was an old folks facility, and had no power or anything, but it had a wetback stove. And so we had hot water and we could cook. And we spent a bit of time in there for about maybe 4 months. And then I moved into Leith Street while we had joined Working with Walt. And that was my introduction to the first wave Dunedin bands. You know, met a lot of them, played some shows with some of them, found the camaraderie really, really nice. You know, they were all mucking in, make and do, you know, sharing instruments and practice rooms and things like that. It was, I enjoyed it very much, and thought this is something that I like to do. Only spent a year down there. The band we all went our separate ways. I moved back to Auckland for various reasons, and bought my Rickenbacker guitar down there, which is something that, you know, a higher purchasing while you're on the rock and roll, you know. Rent was $25 a week. I was getting $200 a week, which was a lot of money back then, you know. And I could afford to buy a $2,000 guitar, and I kept that one for 15 years.
Another person who was in the band Working with Walt was, of course, the bassist David Wood, who went on to sort of, I guess you might say, form the Straightjacket Fits with the other members.
He was a founding member. That's right.
So is that how you sort of got into the band later on when Andrew Broff left?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. It was well, Shane and Jan were together at that stage, you know, living together and both working on albums. They were working on the Melt album with uh, with this guy Gavin, and we were working on Jan's debut album. I was playing guitar with her. She kind of got me on board, um, and basically after Andrew left, they had a flurry of shows in Australia with the band My Bloody Valentine, and it was all booked to go, and they just needed someone in like 4 weeks just to cover Andrew's parts, you know, in the music. And Shane just rang me one night and said, "Hey man, you able to do this? You know, it's not a permanent thing. We just need someone to tour with for this, you know, for these shows." And it was 3 or 4 shows in Australia. I said, "Sure thing." And no internet back then. I'd had the albums because I really thought the band was great, and was chuffed to be asked, and basically learned their whole back catalogue in about 2 weeks,
Right.
both guitar parts, because I was on back then, you know. And we went to Australia and played these shows, and it was phenomenal. It was something I'd never experienced, you know, that at that level. And it was like, holy shit, you know, why would you want to go to work when you can do this and get paid? And afterwards, we came back, and, you know, after the dust settled from that, they got in touch and said, "Hey, we'd like you to be a permanent member, and we'll let you know what's going on." And we were off to Australia not long after that to record an EP of new Shane songs with birthday party producer, I can't remember his name, a Tony Cohen, which was an experience. And and the Done EP was created there in Australia. And we came back to New Zealand and pretty much went straight out on tour, Australasian tour. And that was my introduction into the Fits.
Okay, well, I'll just read this little blurb I've got just to bring people up to speed, because perhaps people who are watching, they may not know a lot about the Straightjacket Fits, because, you know, it was a band that sort of broke up around, 94, something like that.
Yeah.
So you do have your hardcore fans from back in the day, but perhaps people a little younger, they may have heard of the name, but they don't know much about the band. There was Shane Carter and Andrew Bruff, who were I guess you might say they were occasionally at loggerheads. They were the two songwriters, and they had slightly different styles. Andrew left, and you sort of filled in or joined around 1991.
That's right.
Which made so it was Shane Carter on vocals and guitar, John Colley on drums, David Wood on bass, and you on the second guitar or the other guitar.
Second time vocals, yeah.
Oh, your vocals, yes, of course. Many said that the band sort of changed the sound a little with the departure of Andrew. Would you consider your role in the band more of a hired gun kind of a player, where you were just sort of filling in and just doing what you were told? Or were you sort of involved in the songwriting also?
I think what you said in the beginning is probably right. A hired gun. The beauty in that band when Andrew was in there was the tension and just the
Juxtaposition, perhaps?
the way they worked and worked within each other's music was truly magical, you know. And you know, I knew that I had big shoes to fill, but in saying that, I thought a part of the band had definitely changed. You know, there was a totally different direction. Things had changed for Shane as well. Like we were suddenly bought out of the Mushroom contract, Mushroom Records, bought out of it by Arista Records in America, which was, you know, one of the big three. You know, Sony, your Warners, you got Arista, had the Kinks and stuff on there, you know, and that was like, oh shit, this is big time, right? And yeah, so we went to America to record the third album, which was Blow, and spent 3 months over there. It was hard work, but it was it was everything I thought it would be. And it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, because things became apparent at that level that you're not really prepared for. Well, I certainly wasn't. You know, the inner workings of record companies, things like that. And sorry, you're only as good as your last record kind of thing. You know, it was rip. It was cutthroat. And the producer, we did a lot of pre-production on that record. We spent about 2 weeks, you know, 7 days a week, you know, maybe 8 hours a day, working through the songs. The producer was doing his producer bit. Some things worked really, really well. Other things we just thought, geez, man, can you just leave the song alone? It's, you know, it's good. So there was all those things that were eye openers, I'd call them.
So you think the producer sort of was a little bit heavy-handed and was perhaps like putting too much lacquer on the finish of songs?
We deliberately tried to keep it as a live rock record. Like we used 2-inch tape. We had two 2-inch tape machines synced up. We were using a Trident A series console, which was all point-to-point wiring. And songs were always played as a band live with minimal overdubs, you know, just because we wanted to come out firing with a live record, you know.
Energy.
I guess yeah, and at that time, you know, grunge had just hit, you know, and it was kind of, you know, we wanted to be a little bit more raucous than the polish that had been on the previous Straightjacket Fits album, which was the Melt album. There was lots of reverbs, and you know, it had a very English sound to me, that record. This was a step in the other direction. Just, you know, we wanted fat guitars and
rock.
Yeah, we wanted a rock. And there was a few songs on the album that really shouldn't have been there, you know. And they probably show today that they are the weaker tracks, and I'm sure the band would agree. But the ones that rocked, they rocked, and in the end we got the sound we wanted. But you know, I think after that experience, the band was a little bit disillusioned, and Shane was obviously ready to move on past that point. There was one song on that album called Way, which we all really, really loved and hoped it would be a single, but the record company said, no, we're putting this one out, which was Cat in the Can. But Way was just a departure from what the Fits originally were. And I could see that Shane was moving in a different direction, you know. It was the start of Dimmer to me in that song. It was just totally different, you know, and we all loved it, but not so much the record company. And after that experience, you know, we all felt a little dirty, you know. It was like a little bit sullied by the whole experience.
If you were in New Zealand and it was like a local sort of recording company, and they knew the history of sort of the Dunedin thing, the Flying Nun thing, and it, like, all the bands that came out of that were sort of colored with that history. Whereas if you go to the States, they don't know any of that shit. So it's just like, it's just a band, and they're looking at you on face value of, you know, of what they can hear, and they're not basing you on the Flying Nun sort of legacy. They're basing it on sort of just music in general.
Yeah, they were very aware of the Flying Nun label.
Oh, they were?
Like everywhere we went. Oh, yeah. And I think that was them trying to cash in maybe on the next big sound, you know, like the grunge movement kind of came from the same DIY, you know, attitudes, and, you know, jumping in a van with a bunch of like-minded bands and just touring your ass off for no money. And, you know, Dunedin did have a DIY kind of ethic, and the records that they all seem to be. Roy Colbert, I don't know if you've heard of Roy Colbert.
I haven't.
He ran the local music shop down there, a record shop, and I'm sure he had a huge hand in the absolute first wave of Dunedin sound. He turned all these kids on to, you know, Velvet Underground, you know, the Seeds, and all these, you know, kind of cool, you know, rock and pop bands, the whole West Coast thing from the 60s. And I'm convinced that had a huge, that they were listening to that and it was coming through in the music, and the early Chills, Verlaines, Sneaky Feelings, all of that was coming through.
The releases that you did were the EP Done, and it was followed by the final album of the band, Blow. Is that correct?
That's right.
Which is the album I actually recall, mostly due to my girlfriend at the time being a big sort of BFM campus radio listener. So another thing I was amazed about was that you actually played on the late night. Everyone's got frogs in their throat today. I was amazed that you played on Late Night with Conan O'Brien in November 1993. So you're actually on TV and American TV as well. How was that experience?
It was hilarious, but at the same time, again, those things where it's like, okay, we jump in the van, we take all the gear to the studio, we go back to the apartment, and then a limo comes and fucking picks you up and drops you outside with maybe two people there wanting autographs. And then we went on and did it, played flawlessly. It was really good. They just wheeled us out on the stage, did the shit. They wheeled us back in, the curtains closed, ad break. And that was us, and back downstairs. Sound man goes and gets the van. We load up the van. He drives the van back. We go outside and get into the limo again and go back. It was just like, oh, was this fucking real? It was fun to do, but just those double standards. It's kind of showed you what it was really like. Being on a top label. I mean, they looked after us very, very well. We got paid handsomely for just working, just being in the studio. Apartments paid for, brand new Volvo to careen around in LA, and it was a really hard but enjoyable 3 months over there.
I don't specifically remember seeing the Straightjacket Fits, but I was at the Big Day Out when Soundgarden, Headlock Hole, and Shehard played, and that was the same year, as it turns out, that you guys played. Was that 94?
Yeah.
I would have seen you guys. Yes, it was. Big Day Out, Auckland,
it was,
1994. Yeah. So what was that like? Those are amazing shows, those ones. They were huge.
Yeah. I don't remember having much of a good time on that one. It definitely was the last show because I remember our huddle. I was always kind of plagued with, maybe I should have spoken up more about bad monitoring, and, trying to cover Andrew's backing vocals. That was a chore, mate. I could match him on guitar, but when it came to singing, he was streets ahead, and I had to really, work on that just to keep that beautiful side of his vocals up that he had recorded with the band, because we did a lot from the back catalogue,
I've seen you sing live, and I think that you're a good vocalist. Like as far as pitch and key goes, you're generally bang on. It was probably just a monitoring problem then, maybe just your fallbacks.
Yeah, all of that, and a lot of the shows before the end, not that one in particular, but yeah, a lot of shows before that just seemed like we were just trudging through it just to fulfill contracts.
Right.
And there was a few inattentions within the band, because obviously Shane didn't want to be there anymore, and like we're all tired basically, and our girlfriends at home, and our lives at home, and you think it's the dream when you're touring all the time, but it's not always the dream, Add in some substance abuse, and things can get tetchy, but it was generally that that 30 to 40 minutes on stage, that wherever you were, that was the whole reason you were there. And that was the payoff for me, getting to play those great songs that I loved, and trying to do my best to make them as good as they are, and that was a good reward for me, and kind of grew up a lot musically in that situation.
A few Straightjacket Fits members have since passed away, namely David Wood in 2010, and the original guitarist Andrew Bruff also in 2020.
Mm.
You have done the odd show with the band in the past decade, however. You sort of had reunion shows here and there. I've found footage on YouTube of you guys playing places like the Power Station, and I think it was a town hall as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Do you still feel the same sort of, I don't know, enjoyment, energy, that kind of thing from playing all those songs so many years later?
Yeah, absolutely. It does take you back to a time, but the energy is still there. The parts that made me feel good in certain songs where everything, when things just click, and so, oh yeah, that's why we do this. Those moments were still really apparent. Even I think the last time we played would have been just pre-pandemic, Flying Nun 40th anniversary, town hall main stage, and there's a little bit of video footage kicking around of some of that, and boy, there's some moments on there that just showed that the band could still rock.
And save your face and change your color, and your smile to fade in color.
We had James Duncan, who'd had faithfully learned David Wood's bass parts, because he was a very, very original bass player. He was unique in so many ways. And I'm sure any bass player that had to learn his parts would be, oh, really? Okay. That's why the band works, the individual things, making the sum of it what it is. And great. That was a really good time, that last show.
I used to go to the King's Arms almost every week and film local metal bands and rock bands. And I remember you were always super nice to me, because at the time I'd just come back to New Zealand. I didn't really know anybody, and I was just trying to put my energies into doing something. So I thought I'd start filming bands and try to...
Right, yeah, you were living in Japan, right? Is that right?
Yeah. I was trying to connect with local musicians, find out what was going on in Auckland. Starting from knowing absolutely zero. You're one of the people that I always enjoyed connecting with, because you're always super nice to me. Because I'd go in and I'd feel nervous. I felt like I didn't really belong, like I was filming this band and maybe I was intruding. You would let me use a charger for my phone. You'd let me plug in the camera and I could get set up. You'd say, "Oh, would you like a feed off the mixing desk?" And it was great. So thanks. I don't think I've ever thanked you for that, but thank you for that. It was really nice.
Happy to help, mate. It's all about the local scene and everyone helping out. My introduction into especially the metal scene at the King's Arms was, I was just so overwhelmed by the fact that nobody was better than anybody else. Everybody helped each other out. There's a lot, the classic tall poppy syndrome in New Zealand. There was a lot of, well, I don't really want to diss any scene or anything, but some bands, you just know they'd be talking behind your back and you'd hear rumors and stuff. This never happened in the metal scene, Everyone was well supportive. They'd come out to shows, they'd buy your merch, and they were all, it was a place where bloody bogans and IT gurus would meet and get along, and I just thought it was fantastic. And I still, I like to think I'm pretty good at mixing metal, I might not rock it at home on my stereo, but God, oh man, I love mixing it. I love the energy,
What was your involvement with the King's Arms? I believe that you were one of the guys who sort of helped fine tune and set up the PA. How long were you actually working there?
I ended up working there for 22 years.
Fuck.
And when I'd been living in Germany, and I came back in 96, and wanted to start another band. I met up with local bands, and Lisa Gordon was playing guitar in a friend of mine, Mark Anderson's band called The Couch. And she said, "Oh, we're looking for someone," because Carl, who was also in the band, was doing sound every Thursday night sort of thing. And it was just a little vocal PA set up in the corner in the lounge bar. And I said, "Oh, I'll take that over." Wasn't getting paid. They were paying me in booze, which I didn't mind at the time, because it was, I liked a good party, and lots of mates were playing there, and it was just a good time. And it's pretty much how it started. And they kind of built up the PA over the years. Paul Crowther had a lot to do with that. He was very instrumental in getting the last Yorkville PA in there that was adequate for the room, you know. And so he was instrumental in that. And that's, 22 years later, it was like, oh, I couldn't believe I was still there. I was getting paid wages by then. So
It was a massive loss to the Auckland music scene when the King's Arms closed. I still actually miss it,
great room.
as I'm sure you do as well, having been there for so long.
I do, mate.
What about your sort of sound engineering side? How did you get into all of that? Were you doing that way back in the day before the Straightjacket Fits? Did you study?
I didn't study it per se, but I was hanging around, when early 80s and that, when 4-track cassette recorders came out, you could record in your bedroom. You had 4 tracks. Hell, it was revolutionary. You could start producing your own music for better or for worse, but that kind of grounded me a little bit in the signal flow and getting familiar with mics and, things like that, recording processes. And basically, I actually never went out of my way to try and be a sound engineer. I kind of just fell into it after, Fitz broke up. I had to use up all my frequent flyer miles. So I did some jaunts to Europe with who I had a friend living in Germany and stayed over there for a bit. And when I came back, straight back on the rock and roll. And, I finally ended up getting paid to look after the sound at the King's Arms, and just kind of, I'm happy that I did that because it just kept me in, music and things like that. And I really still enjoy the camaraderie of musicians. I know through my own experience, there's always a bit of a dumping ground for misfits and, freaks and people that just don't want to follow the norm, and I always felt like I was one of those kind of people growing up, didn't want to get married, didn't want to buy a house, have a mortgage, be a debt slave. I was kind of just wanted to party, and be with people who are having a great time. And that's another reason why I keep doing that job. I'm not rich. I got shithole money, mate, and I don't really care about money, but man, I've had a good life. Still having one.
So now you're working at Whammy.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your sort of permanent haunt now?
That's me. Yeah, that's my bread and butter there. It's beautiful place to work. The nurturing, keeping the music scene alive. That place and the wine cellar are crucial in Auckland City. The bands that have come through there, and it's tough out there at the moment, but I hope it never goes. Watching bands come through, giving them the best I can give them with what we've got, and watching them fly, it's just so rewarding. Knowing that you've tried your best to help them out, give them a few pointers here and there, or generally just let them do their thing, whether it be an amp on 11. You think, oh, holy shit, how am I going to cope with that? That sort of thing, but not restraining them in any way because it's their art, it's their outlet. And I know there's a lot of sound engineers out there that probably don't think that way. They'll tell you that, no, that's too loud, you need to do this and do that. And to me, that's not the point. The point is making somebody who wants to do that for whatever reason. Mental health is a lot of reasons why people do this. It's an outlet. I just let them do what they want to. You want to sit up in the corner over there? Totally, bro. We'll make that work. It's all about them.
What's your life like these days? Do you have any sort of plans for any more musical adventures?
I'd like to think so, but playing live tends to hit my pay packet because it's always normally a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night that you're playing. Wherefore, I just wouldn't make any money, So there's that to contend with. But quite happy that I've got a really nice studio here, more guitars than I could play, But it's fun.
Do you have more Seeds of Orbit stuff to do? Is that band still a thing?
That band's not still a thing, no. It kind of again, the reason it kind of stopped was because I just couldn't make enough money, because we were getting shows and things like that, local shows, playing the usual traps. But again, I would just be losing money. I would have had to have if I had a day job or something like that, it would be certainly be on the cards to have a full-time band and do shows. But I just can't bring myself to leave my job because I love it so much. You know, down there in the trenches with the new bands in a dark underground club where they're all excited and they're just starting out and things like that. Or some of the bigger bands that come through. We get a lot of overseas acts come through, and being a part of that is really cool. But I just don't want to stop doing it because I love it so much.
That sort of brings me on to my next question. What were a few of the most memorable moments of your time as an engineer?
Recently, I very much enjoyed The Exploited. I don't know if you know who The Exploited are.
I do.
Very excellent. Watty, the singer, who's still going, is absolute ledge. Right from back in the day, he's God knows how many heart attacks he's had, but he's still bloody there, mate, and he's still going, and he's still fighting the good fight. And that was an honour to mix that show, the last show they played here. He may not ever come back, and that was a particularly good one.
What were a few of the most memorable moments as a musician?
One springs to mind particularly with Straightjacket Fits. We were in the north of Germany somewhere playing to nobody. It was like an aircraft hangar or something that could be converted into a venue, shall we say. The PA was insane. It was amazing. And I don't even recall seeing any more than 10 people in this place. There was a little dog there as well. And it was like 18 below zero or something. We couldn't feel our fingers and shit, but something happened that night where the band was just so on. I don't often get the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, but that was one particular show where I think it was Bremerhaven, somewhere like that, where everything just clicked and the sound was just so sweet on stage, and everything we did was just like, wow, this is the whole reason why. And that was one of the true highlights for me. And there's also been many gigs with the band Shaft, who I played with. That's Bob Carty, Rich Mixture, and Cam. Bob's another Dunediner who was in the band The Axemen. Don't know if you heard of The Axemen.
I've heard of
but
the
I
name.
got recruited to join bass, to join them on bass, because I never played bass before, and I thought it would be a great time to learn because the drummer was just a phenomenal drummer. And so many shows that happened with that band. Like, we're playing one night at a gig, and the singer while we're playing, just jumps out the window with his guitar, just jumps out the window onto the street, like, half a story. What the fuck's Bob doing? The band played on. So I went over and looked out the window, and Bob's playing away on the street to himself. Suddenly, Bob Frisbee gets the microphone out there, and then suddenly the whole band's on well, except for Rich, who was holding it down on the drums in the room, and we're playing on the street to the people in the bar, and that was just, okay, this is nuts, but it's so damn cool, And Straightjacket Fits was a great band, probably the greatest band I played in. But I have to say the most fun I had was playing with Shaft. Just rock and roll, man. It was just too much fun.
All right. Well, I have one last question, and as a muso, what advice do you have for other people sort of trying to follow their own musical journey? What advice would you have for them?
Oh boy, have fun. I mean, the further you go into it, other things will become apparent that may not be so much fun. Like, trying to get your Marshall stack to a gig, or, buying strings or something. It's all a part of it. But man, just have fun. It's a great way to meet people and explore other people's music, the people that you choose to play with. It's just a beautiful thing. You can learn so much, and the camaraderie is generally pretty strong because you're all there for the same reason. Some people want to be stars. Some people just want to do it because it helps them in their life, and that's what it was for me. That's why I'm still a sound engineer at 60, because I just can't get away from the feeling that it gives me. I love it.
Thanks very, very much for chatting with me tonight or this afternoon. One thing to remember is never interview somebody at around 3 or 4 p.m. on a weekday, because the internet is absolute garbage. So apologies for that. But yeah, we managed to get through to the end, and I'm very pleased that I've managed to have this chat with you. It's been very enlightening. So yeah,
it's an absolute pleasure, Will, and thank you, mate. I know we took a while to do this, but your contribution to the New Zealand music scene, especially in Auckland, is second to none. And I love seeing you every time you turn up at Wham's. Wow, it's Will, yeah. Come to collect the kit or something, or drop some amps off, and it's always a pleasure to see you, mate.
I'll let you get on with your day. Thanks very much. Say goodbye to everyone, because I know quite a few people have been waiting to check this interview out. So say goodbye to everybody.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. I hope it was at least interesting, perhaps even enlightening. I don't know, but thank you all. And thanks, Will.
It was probably both. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you later. Bye-bye.
Ciao.